Hey guys, how you doing? This is Luke Dooley. I'm the president at Ocean Programs. Thanks for jumping on. If you're watching this live or if you're going to watch this later on, we're excited to start to offer some of these conversations. We're going to do these on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays at 3 p.m. each of those days. And the thought here was that we want to bring a conversation to you all from some leaders that we trust and respect, that we know are handling our current crisis and our present moment with excellence, with care, with dignity, and have tools that they can share with the broader community. And so we could think of no one better to open up this conversation with than my friend Tim Metzner. Tim is actually one of the co-founders of the organization known as Ocean. So Tim was one of those entrepreneurs you've probably heard about as we tell our story, who had a dream many years ago of what would it look like to create a training organization for entrepreneurs that blended together biblical principles and entrepreneurial education, and created community for folks who are going through the startup journey. And Tim has done that. He lives that out. And so, Tim, thanks for jumping on with us.
Yep. Good to be here, man.
Will you tell us a little bit about your current role and the startup that you're currently in the midst of?
Yeah, sure. So company's called Coterie Insurance. We are in the insure-tech space. Basically what that means is we're one of the kind of startups that's running after the broader category of insurance and taking a technology first kind of approach to doing that. So Coterie is focused on the commercial side. So for small business owners and freelancers and anyone who needs business insurance, those are the kinds of insurance products we're launching. And our super high level vision is like, we want to deliver insurance through API instead of through agents. So we're kind of changing the way insurance is distributed in the kind of commercial business world.
It's great. I love that problem that you guys are trying to solve. It's a really cool market that you're, I think, disrupting, and you're bringing a much needed service to. And so I'm thrilled for you guys. And you guys have had some exciting recent news that came just on the kind of on the front end of the coronavirus moment that we're all living in. And I know you personally were pretty pleased with the timing of that, right?
Yeah, and certainly one of those things that we didn't plan for. It just worked out in our favor. So having closed our Series A financing, just before really things slowed down here in the U.S. And that's not to say that companies won't be able to raise funding throughout, a period like this, but traditionally funding does slow down and it doesn't necessarily dry up, but it gets a lot harder. And so to enter a period of uncertainty like this and having raised enough capital kind of to see through to the end of that, I mean, unless it lasts 5 years, I feel like we have at least a pretty good shot of surviving this and being one of the few that if you can do that, oftentimes you see companies that don't just survive, they have a chance to actually kind of grow through that. So, we're feeling extremely fortunate to have been to land in that spot of like, we have, enough capital to both survive it. And also, I think a topic of the conversation today is like, we can take care of our people and assure them that they will have, jobs and paychecks. And not everyone can say that right now.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of things will get harder in the midst of this. One of those obviously being gathering with people, pulling people together for a community, which kind of gets me to my first question that I wanted to ask you. In the midst of a moment where it's hard to gather and hard to bring people together, you chose to create new community. You chose to gather folks around a specific conversation and really start what I think you would call a community group or a small group for startup founders and leaders and entrepreneurs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's the intent of that group and why did you feel like right now is the right time to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's kind of been on my mind for a long time. So you mentioned earlier on, like one of the co-founders of Ocean, or, Unpolished initially. And the genesis of that really started around a small group, like around a table with a handful of entrepreneurs eating breakfast together. Like that, it was a, quote unquote small group that kind of led to starting all the stuff that we have today. And over the last couple of years, as I've reflected on all the amazing things that Ocean has been able to accomplish in the different programs and different ways we're serving entrepreneurs, like it sort of occurred to me, like one of the ways I didn't feel like we're necessarily doing that is through small groups. And so, knowing that a lot of what we built came out of a small group, and it came out of just like people volunteering their time to want to do something they're passionate about, I had this thought of like, I wonder how much more potential future fruit there could be if we could build a model for replicating that. And so I, started just toying with the idea of like building a curriculum or a small group, kind of thinking of like, what if there was like a 6-month journey where we were very intentionally going to gather together for 6 months every week and cover topics that are really important to founders or potential stumbling blocks, and how might we increase the potential impact of those founders on their companies, on their employees, on their families, on their communities, if we were talking about stuff intentionally that no one else around them is going to talk about. And so that happens through a lot of the programs we do at Ocean, certainly, but creating something that literally could be repeatable by anyone without having to go through a formal program felt really important to me. And so I wanted to start to just tease that out a little bit. And so I had the idea of like doing that, and I kind of sat on it for a while and finally decided like, all right, I got to move on this. And for me personally, if I'm selfish, like I need community now more than I did a month ago. This is hard for everyone, being sort of isolated. And it felt like, well, I can't get together and kind of reach out and touch these people, but we can hang out on Zoom and we can talk about the same stuff we'd talk about. And it might be a little weird and my kids might interrupt in the background and, some of that, but why not give it a shot? So it wasn't necessarily, I felt like I'm going to start this because of the current situation. It was like, this has been on my heart and now feels like maybe as good a time as any.
That's great. And you guys started this morning, right? You had your first meetup. How did it go? Were there some themes that emerged quickly for the entrepreneurs that were on that group?
Yeah, I mean, today was it was a number of people who don't know each other, so it was a lot of like, share your story, right? Like let's just jump in and share a little bit of our backgrounds. But I did start to share my kind of framework for the different topics I want to talk about, and there was absolutely a lot of things that seem to resonate with people. Not surprisingly for you, I'm sure identity kind of surfaced pretty quickly, and there's a lot of different angles you can take with that topic when you throw it out there. But a lot of people wrap their mind, I think, quickly around like, oh yeah, that is something now that you mentioned it, something I wrestle with fairly regularly. And I kind of presented it in a way where I was sharing my own, where even in the midst of both good and bad, right? So in the midst of like closing Series A, like I have a tendency to want to start to like celebrate and like pat myself on the back and feel like, yay, hit my mark. That's the thing. Like that was really the thing we wanted to do, was raise this round. Like, yes, absolutely, it was a business goal. We wanted to accomplish that, but I got to be careful not to wrap too much pride or meaning or value or identity in the next business objective, whether it's closing a client or raising a round or whatever, hiring a key employee, whatever that thing might be. Like, it's not just a super high level, like, don't let your identity be your business. Yes, that's true. But also like in the particular weeds of like this thing I'm running after, that I like trying to balance this idea of like running hard and being dogged about trying to achieve that, but not letting it define kind of who you are on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis.
Yeah. So what's a quick tip you have for entrepreneurs out there? How do you guard against that? How do you stay rooted somewhere other than in that, strictly in the kind of the purposes of the business?
For me, it's two things. One is like regularly talking about it with people around me. It's like I have to bring that up on a regular basis and just talk about like the things I'm running after, and use that lens regularly when I'm saying like, how much am I letting this define kind of who I am at this moment in time? And the second is related to that, which is like having people around you have permission to call you on it. Right? Like I don't always see it. I have my blinders on sometimes, and I might not always catch when I'm kind of slipping into that. So whether it's my wife or my small group or a friend, like having not just people who can call you on it, but space for them to do it. And that's part of the purpose of a group like this, is like, if we're getting together on a regular basis, you'll have those opportunities to talk to me about things like that probably no one else around me will.
That's so good, Tim. You've said a lot of things that resonate right there. One of the things you've said recently that I've seen that really resonated with me was, it was a simple thought. I was talking to a friend earlier today, and he hosted a kind of a thing online, and then he was asking me afterwards, how do you think that went? And I said, I thought it was really good. It was really simple stuff, but I think in moments of crisis, we tend to forget the simple things, the simple habits, the simple structures of our lives, right? And we almost let the tumult kind of win the day, instead of saying, you know what, I'm still going to organize, I'm still going to structure, I'm still going to be strategic. And so I saw in your Twitter feed a few days ago, you just said this, I'm just going to read it. It said, challenge as you start the week. Find a few quiet moments to reflect and do these three things. Write down what you're grateful for, including this day. Receive it as a gift. Number two, think about what you're called to accomplish this week. How will you return the day? And number three, just be still. I saw that and I thought, man, it's such a practical, simple piece of wisdom. Is that a regular rhythm for you? Is that something you're embracing more in the midst of the current moment?
Yeah, that's already been a pretty regular rhythm of mine. Like, I can't say I'm perfect. I don't do it every day, but I have a journal template that I pull out in my quiet time. It's like reminds me to do those things like every single day, that I do this, right? And so what I have tried to do though is be more intentional about encouraging others around me to practice these things instead of kind of keeping it to myself. So I'm trying to be a little more of a cheerleader around overall, like kind of quick bank shot things that you can do to make this day, this environment, this moment a little bit better. Like both, in my family and in my company, and even I've been probably more active on Twitter recently than I have in a long time. It is a little bit of a microphone, an opportunity, a voice to kind of share some of those things. And so for me, that's been a really regular discipline and practice. And I could tell you, like, at the end of the day, like, I feel different if I had started my day with that than if I hadn't. And so like I said, I'm not perfect about it, but it's almost a reminder to myself to, like, this is a good time to be even more disciplined in that practice of spending those moments in the morning, kind of before my house is stirring and my business is moving.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. The day can just get away from us so fast if we don't have
Yep.
some grounding and some habits and some consistent kind of structure to how okay, this is what I'm gonna kind of step into. I'm gonna step into work mode. I saw some people, like, I've seen all the memes. People say, don't forget to change from your sleeping sweatpants into your work sweatpants as you
Yes.
start your day. And
Right.
then about 8 p.m., you need to get back into your sleeping sweatpants or your lounging sweatpants in between.
Right.
It's like, I think that's kind of, it's a joke, but the heart of that is like, yeah, we actually have to have some cues and some triggers that orient our day and that set and kind of order our work, right? Tim, as
No, it
we
feels
start,
silly, but
oh,
I'm
go
like,
ahead.
I'm putting like real pants on and clothes on every day. Like it's like most days I don't have them on now, but I'm putting shoes on even. Like I am preparing as if I'm walking out the door, and out that has shifted my mind to like, all right, it's time to get after it.
That's good. I think that's really good. So, hey, as we start to wrap up, our goal is to keep all these conversations 15 minutes or less. We're about 12 and a half minutes in. Tim, what
Cool.
advice do you have right now for founders, for small business owners or high tech founders, whoever may be seeing this, for leading kind of a startup in the midst of this environment?
Yeah, I think it's a lot like it. My advice is like act more like a pastor now than ever. Like
Mm.
your job is to be a shepherd right now. Like your job is not to redline your team. Your job is it's not to sit back and coast and do nothing either. Like you still have business objectives, at least for many of us. Like you have an opportunity to still grow and build your business. So like take that seriously. But as an example, as my team is in the midst of quarterly planning, like we do OKR planning every quarter, and like we had this intentional conversation literally just earlier today about like let's be cognizant of the fact that like there are other things people are dealing with right now, and like let's not make this a quarter that we're going to challenge people more than we ever have. Like we are in this spot as an early stage startup where we don't have the luxury of coasting, but if we redline people, like they will burn out, and like you should always treat people well. I can just promise you, like people are going to remember how their employers treat them in this time. Like in the midst of this chaos, like the actions you take, the way you react, the way you take care of your employees, like that's going to matter for a really long time. And so little things for us, like we're sending an extra check right now monthly to our team as like a food stipend, like order more food, because not only is it good for you and your family, it's also good for the restaurants around you. Like do that, just take some extra time and eat out if you can do that. Or things like being super flexible around schedule. Like let's be okay with different work hours right now than normal. Let's be okay with like surprise guests in the background of Zoom calls and not even like worry about that. That was already sort of a thing for us. That wasn't a big deal. Let's not expect people to have their most productive months and weeks of their life right now. Let's just be careful about how much we're pushing people, and like do extra calls. Like I'm spending more one-on-one time with my team than I ever. It's actually really good in that like I'm spending this dedicated time. Like, hey, let's just jump on a call and chat. And so I think taking extra time and care of your people right now is just super important. Listening to them, having a space where they can kind of process stuff live, and it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, but like, what are the little things for the individuals that are kind of directly under you that well that you can do that will just make their life a little bit better right now?
That's good. There's some real intentional and practical things I think in there for all of us. I love that line of right now, maybe more than ever, begin to act like a pastor and a shepherd to your folks. Check in regularly. Make sure people. I've seen a lot of people say, yeah, make sure your people are being seen, they're being heard, that they know you're concerned about them and checking in on them. I think you're right too about companies' legacies in this moment. I saw, I think it was Mark Cuban said, the way that companies treat their employees and their customers right now in this moment will either mar or mark their legacy for a
Mhm.
really long time. And
Yeah.
I think it's really true. It's good wisdom and insight for all of us. Tim, thanks for
Yeah.
taking some time out of your busy day here on a Friday, jumping on with us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Happy to be here.
All right. We'll see you guys next Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. with some more experts to talk about this interesting time we're all living in together.